Bobby Torres of Frightbox recording here, and welcome to Critiquing Subscriber Mixes, episode 24. So before we dive into this group of mixes submitted by my loyal subscribers, I just want to let you know this. I don't care if you're using an analog console, analog tape, Logic, Cubase, cheap, free plugins, expensive, overpriced plugins, it doesn't matter. If you want to achieve professional sounding productions and mixes, you have to have a basic, fundamental understanding of EQ and compression. And because of this, I'm offering you direct access right now for absolutely free to my crisp and clear heavy mix formula. The heavy mix formula is comprised of three primary components: an EQ and compression mixing cheat sheet that you could reference at any time. That's in the form of a simple PDF. The PDF contains clickable links to private tutorials where I give you a detailed rundown of how I go about EQ and compressing each of the main instruments within a heavy production. And finally, each of these tutorials comes with a multi-track download that you'll have instant access to, so you can mix the exact same files that I'm mixing and you could practice your mixing along with me. Again, the crisp and clear heavy mix formula is absolutely free, and there's a link below in this video's description and you could have instant access right now. So without any further ado, let's jump into this group of mixes submitted by my subscribers. And our first mix here comes from Mr. Phil. Let's see what we got.
She can't hide. Feeling deep, hardly sleep, can't find truth on the inside.
Okay, Phil, I like what I hear. I like the riffs. I like the vibe of the production. The drums have a nice, cool, raw vibe, if that's what you were going for. By far, the biggest problem I hear is the guitars are way too loud and very, very, very upper mid heavy. So what that's doing is that it's distracting me from the rest of the mix, and it's actually kind of hurting my ears only because the guitars are so mid-heavy and so loud against the drums. Remember, when we mix a song, you want everything to be kind of balanced and be audible in and of themselves, meaning equally audible. And I could tell, I could be wrong here, but I'm pretty much assuming, that whoever mixed this was the guitar player, right? The guitars are super loud and the bass mid-range is really, really loud. So my advice here is that if you're doing any boosting on your guitar tracks in the upper mids, get that boost out of there and take your guitars and turn them down and kind of get them sitting evenly with the snare drum. That's how you're going to be able to tell if your mix is balanced, if your guitar and snare drum are kind of sitting at a roughly the same perceivable level. Let's just put it that way. So give that a shot, man, and let me know how that works out for you. And thank you so much for submitting your mix. All right, our next mix here comes from, I love this name, Soundcorn Production. Soundcorn Productions, let's hear your mix. Okay, Soundcorn Productions, dude, this is a great sounding production overall. The performances are killer. A few nitpicky things. I wouldn't even focus so much here on EQ or anything like that. It really comes down to level. I feel your hi-hats are very loud and your cymbals crashes are not loud enough. So I would just turn your hats down if you're using programmed drums, or if it sounds like programmed drums to me. So turn your hats down and turn your crashes up a little. And your rhythm guitars, I love the tone. It's a really heavy tone, but kind of dry and crisp and very, very audible and clear, which is awesome. I would take your tone, actually your rhythm guitars, and just bring them down a little, right? I'd keep your snare where it is and bring your rhythm guitars down a little to help create extra space and clarity in your mix, because everything is so clear, your guitars do not have to be overbearing to be heard. That's pretty much it, man. I really am impressed by just the musicianship and if there is editing here, the editing, because it sounds like you paid a lot of attention to detail, which is great if you want professional results, which in my opinion, this is sounding very professional. But give those tweaks a shot and let me know how that works out for you in your future productions. And thank you so much for your submission. And I love the name of your production company or studio. Up next, we have a mix from Stefan. Let's see what we got.
I didn't mean to break our tie, 'cause today I thought I'd never get through to get over you, but I would never tell you lies. I'm better off it's over now, and I'm sure somehow that
Okay, well, Stefan, really cool tune here. It's nice to have something different on the channel. It sounds like a kind of ballady rock kind of thing. The music sounds great. The thing with the vocals that I'm hearing is that they're overly dynamic, meaning they sound like they're kind of like a little too loud, a little too quiet, a little too loud, a little too quiet. And that's simply because I don't think there's actually enough compression on them. If you're applying compression and you're scared of over compressing your vocal, try stacking compressors in your mix. And here's what I like to do. I have a compressor that's, kicking off a few dB or taking off a few dB before my EQ. Then I have my EQ. Then I have a secondary compressor that's compressing a little more heavily, maybe around 5 to 10 dB of compression, maybe 3 to 5 in the first compressor, 5 to 10 in the second. Then I like to use a brick wall limiter after that to catch any stray peaks. By doing this, you'll often end up with a nice consistent vocal sound that doesn't sound compressed. And I think you need this in your mix in order for your vocals to compete with the polished sounding music. So Stefan, give this a shot and let me know how that works out for you. And thank you so much for submitting this killer production. And our next mix here comes from Vincent. Okay, well, Vincent, super brutal, super tight. I like what I'm hearing. The one thing I'm going to mention is that it sounds like you're rolling off a lot of low end on your guitars. So I would let a little more low end in on your guitar tone. Or you're just, rolling off low end on everything and it's creating a thinner sounding guitar tone. But the guitars sound tight enough where you can allow a little extra low end in. Here's my philosophy. If a guitar performance is tight, I'll allow a little more low end, even sometimes down to 80 hertz. If the guitars are a little sloppy, if I'm doing like a thrash thing that doesn't have to be super tight or something, I'll be a little more heavy-handed with the low end removal because you have to be, because the low end will quickly get messy. But here the guitars sound pretty sick and pretty tight, but they sound thin to me. They're very nasally and like they're all in the mid-range, almost like a lead guitar tone. So I would kind of allow your high-pass filter to be set a little lower this way, right? Yeah, lower this way to allow like 100 hertz, maybe even 90 hertz, something like that, right? That range. Also, the kick drums are extremely loud and they're kind of like taking my attention. So if you're going to keep your kicks this loud, what I would recommend, again, this is just my opinion, would be to suck out some of the mid-range around the 1 to 4K range to kind of soften the kicks because they don't have to be that abrasive if they're that loud in your mix. So give that a shot. I think that'll kind of make your mix a little more fat and a little more pleasing sounding, just those two simple tweaks. And let me know how that works out for you. Thank you so much for submitting this excellent mix. All right, our final mix here comes from Arianaut, which I think is the band name. So let's see what we have. Okay, I like what I'm hearing. It sounds like a lot of this is programmed. Either guitars are so heavily edited that they sound programmed, or the actual guitars are programmed, which there's nothing wrong with, totally fine. But the one thing that stands out to me is the snare drum, because it's programmed, is really poking out of the mix in a way that sounds artificial. So in order to help kind of blend this mix together and make it sound a little less squashed and programmed, I recommend turning your snare drum down slightly, just so it sits in the mix in a more natural way. And that's going to really help the overall production. So much of your overall mix and sound of your production and mix comes down to your snare drum sound. I know it's not really an obvious thing. As mix engineers, we'll focus on the smallest details like the EQ on your toms, the EQ on your leads, things like that. But in reality, it's big picture stuff that really matters, like your snare drum sound, the level of your snare drum, the level of your rhythm guitars, the level of your overheads, how your vocals are sitting in the mix, things like that. So give that a shot and let me know how that works out for you. So I would just like to shout out and thank everyone for submitting this excellent group of mixes. And if you're interested in submitting your mix to the channel for me to review, there are detailed instructions in the video's description. And again, if you're looking to improve the sound of your productions and mixes and you need some extra guidance, you could have direct access to my crisp and clear heavy mix formula. You get an EQ and compression mixing cheat sheet, private mixing tutorials for each of the main instruments within heavy mix, and multi-track downloads that accompany each of the tutorials so you can mix along with me. Right now, the Crisp and Clear Heavy Mix formula is absolutely free, and you can have direct access by clicking the link below in this video's description. And do not forget to click the little bell icon so you can be notified every time I upload one of my weekly videos on all things metal and rock production. If you're interested in some Frightbox swag, we've got t-shirts, mugs, and a ton of other cool stuff on the way. There's a link below to the Frightbox merch store in this video's description. And until next time, happy mixing.